Sun today. Feels like spring. I don't love so much, but that's okay, right? There's more rain in the forecast. I saw, like, fingers crossed. Though, was it Friday that it rained a whole bunch or Thursday last week? We walked out to about this much water in our entire patio, which was not good. Our whole patio was like covered in water, and I was like, maybe I should stop asking for so much rain if it's gonna flood in my patio. Everyone have a good weekend? Anyone else watch the Super Bowl? Yeah. What'd you think of the halftime show? We were making fun of it for like ever. We're like, it's just like we went back 30 years to the 90s and nothing changed since then. Yeah. Okay. That was a really good game. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, for a little Brock Purdy, who's like a rookie, who makes like almost nothing. I saw a comparison. Mahomes makes $59,000 a pass. Like every time he throws the ball, he makes $59,000. I'm like, can I throw one? Just one, right? And Brock Purdy makes like 59,000 a game. Like it's pretty good.
Thinking about the skill required to be playing football from the perspective of someone at the field and being able to just throw the ball, go break, and we're proud of this and which we need. Which is what does this.
Yeah, it was a great game. I'm a big Mahomes fan. I got my Mahomes socks on. I was very excited that they like won, but I kind of wanted the 49ers to win just because, you know, like it was like they had such a good year and it was such a like, I don't know, I was rooting for him like as the little there was like this whole article about how he has like a roommate because he can't afford his rent in San Francisco versus Mahomes who makes like $100 million a year. Right? So I was kind of rooting for him, but it was a great game. I don't know how I felt about the halftime show. That's usually my point where I have to like make up for like not helping with the family for 2 hours. So I didn't watch like half of the halftime show, but anybody else, the commercials they were all right. And my kids, it was like the first year that they were like, there are commercials, right? Because normally they don't care. But I kind of made them sit and watch the game. So, and I had like 3 football cakes. It was amazing. 3 different football cakes, right? Beautiful day, right? And now football's over. And it's sad. What? It is a self-cake day. Yesterday was a self-cake day. Every day should be a self-cake day. So now I'm moving on to obsessing about my cruise in March, which is, let's see, 40 days, 2 hours and 26 minutes away, right? I'm counting down, right? So that'll be my next thing to move on to since football is sadly over, or baseball, right? Not too much longer till baseball. Anyway, so thankfully, on the plus side, we have a normal full week. So like we haven't had one of those in a little while. So I'm excited. We have today and Wednesday. We'll keep going with anxiety disorders today. And I wrote that up there. I'll talk about it at the end just for a few minutes. But don't forget that diagnosis paper, the first part of it is due tonight by 11:59 p.m. So I'll talk about that for the last couple of minutes at the end today and show you where to turn that in and just kind of see if there are any questions about that. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll go back to where we left off and keep going with being anxious, keep going with our anxiety disorders. So we talked a lot about like generalized anxiety, phobias, and how to treat them. And today we'll start with panic attacks and panic disorder, and then we'll go to OCD and some OCD related disorders, and then go from there. So panic attacks are another relatively common anxiety disorder that a lot of people struggle with. Anyone in here ever had a panic attack before or know somebody who's had a panic attack? So it's a lot of hands, right? These happen and they can be very intense experiences. They tend to be very short-lived, right? It's a short experience, but you can be worn out and exhausted from it for days or hours at least. And they're scary. Oftentimes people think they're having a heart attack. They might even think that they're dying. Sometimes people go to the emergency room for these thinking it is like something like a heart attack. And it turns out that it's panic, which isn't any less scary, but it might, be a little less dangerous in a sense. So a lot of you raised your hand. Anyone want to describe or any comments or stories about what these have felt like for you or people in your lives? Yeah.
I was driving up north, I was going to Brookings, Oregon.
Okay.
Fiance, and I remember I was driving and he kept like, I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he was talking perfectly clear. I just was like, what was he saying? Like, I thought I was like having a stroke at first.
Uh-huh.
Because everything just started, like, I was driving. Everything started just like tunnel, like first it was the tunnel vision. I couldn't understand what anybody, like what he was saying.
Sure.
I couldn't even feel the wheel under my hands, and then like, because it happened before, I'm like, oh, I know what this is, but like. every
Yeah.
single time, it never happened before. So, my heart was like beating out my chest, and I couldn't, like, my vision was like a pinhole, like.
Mhm.
Pull over and feel out, like, yeah, I'm shocked. Oh,
Yeah, very scary, right? And there were a bunch of other hands. Yeah.
Approximately like once a month at least.
Okay.
And basically what usually happens is, like, the first like symptom is like my stomach will start like churning. Like,
Mhm.
that's like the first like warning sign. But then, my, like, as it advances, my entire body will like start shaking and then tingle, and then my hands and feet will go.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and like my teeth will chatter,
Yeah.
and like I can't like talk or do anything.
Yeah. And those are very different descriptions, but all very common symptoms. They can look a little different from person to person, but they're really uncomfortable, right? If you're kind of hearing that. Anybody else? Any other comments or thoughts? Yeah.
This wasn't me, but my best friend
Sure.
described one that he had to me as being every single thing around him being incredibly like overstimulating.
Okay.
Just every noise, every, exposure, was all so frenetically feeling around that, which was unbearable.
Yeah, and sometimes what happens is that just causes more panic and it kind of fuels itself to be carried that way. There was another hand over here. Yeah,
Really hot.
hot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to breathe.
Yeah,
Feels like my lungs are pressing against my ribs.
yeah.
And then it gets hard to like, I get really jittery. So
Mhm.
it's hard to focus. Like everything comes like overstimulating. So
Yeah.
It's hard to focus. So
Yeah, really intense, right? Let's put some of these symptoms up here on the board because these, again, are all things that are really common. For a panic attack, I'm just going to abbreviate PA. Panic attack. You have to have 4 or more of a bunch of different symptoms. So we'll say 4+ symptoms. And one thing that we often say is that they reach a peak within a short period of time, like within like 10 minutes or so. So the event itself can be kind of a very short period of time, like they reach a peak within about 10 minutes, but some of the symptoms of it can last for hours, right? Or even like you might have some warning signs, like you were saying with you, your stomach might be like the first sign. Other people, it might be tunnel vision or things getting loud or things feeling far away. So they can kind of last for a bit, but it reaches a peak very quickly. And like the core of it tends to be a shorter experience. So oftentimes people have like heart palpitations. It can very much feel like you're having a heart attack. It's not uncommon for people to think they're having a heart attack and go to the emergency room because their heart feels like it's beating out of its chest, right? Like you can feel it pounding. So you could say palpitations are like heart pounding. Oftentimes people will start sweating. Right, so you might get hot or you might get cold, but it's very common for people to start sweating, trembling, or shaking. And again, all of this is brought on by something psychological, right? By like anxiety, fear, panic, which might not even be related to anything in specific, right? It can just be kind of random. Other things, you get shortness of breath. You might feel like you're choking. Maybe you can't swallow or you can't get enough air. You're like gasping in a way or feel like you are choking. Nausea. Feeling dizzy. Right, all of those are really common things. Other things you might see, people get what's called derealization. It's almost like the world around you becomes fuzzy or unreal, right? You described like a tunnel feeling that's really common. Things can feel very far away or feel unreal to you. Although those things are pretty common. People can get like numbness or tingling. Right, you might lose sensation in part of your body, especially like extremities is really common. We talked about sweating. You could also add chills to that. Those are all like the really common symptoms that people would experience. There's more, but I think the only other one I would add is like a sense of impending death.
Yeah, that's a big one.
People feel like they're gonna die, right? Like it's not, a lot of you are nodding, right? Like it's not gonna stop, right? Like it's gonna like be fatal, right? And what happens is that feeling of like, I'm gonna die, and all of these physical things, the more you pay attention to them, the more fear and anxiety and panic you feel, and it just becomes this kind of fueling cycle. So it gets really important to find ways to kind of calm down during these, which can be very difficult to do. We can talk about that more in a minute. But people can have isolated panic attacks, or they can have what's called panic disorder. So if you have one panic attack, we would just call that a panic attack. But people who have them recurrently can get what's called panic disorder. And then sometimes as a part of that, people become so afraid that they're going to have a panic attack that they don't want to go out into the world because they don't want to have one around other people. And so we sometimes specify, do people have panic disorder with or without something called agoraphobia? Agoraphobia is a super interesting phobia in the sense that it has a lot of different elements to it. It has this element of being like afraid to be out in public, right? Being around crowds, not being able to escape. There's also kind of a degree of fear of embarrassment that comes with it. Like you don't want to have a panic attack and embarrass yourself in front of other people. You don't want to have a panic attack out in the world and not be able to get to a source of safety and kind of get alone. I have a little bit of agoraphobia in the sense that I won't sit in the middle of a row ever because I feel like I can't get out if I needed to, right? And I don't love crowds, right? Not a lot of people love crowds. I think I love them even less now. Like I think that's pretty common though, like post-COVID or like, you know, during, after COVID. But agoraphobia, oftentimes what this happens with this is that people won't leave their home because they don't want to be in a class or in a movie theater or out in the world and have a panic attack. So they get this fear of like, I can't be out in the world. And so they can kind of become reclusive. You see this in movies sometimes. Like, what was the one, Woman in the Window is one featuring this, right? There's a couple, but anyone experienced this at all, or with that fear of like, you mentioned, you know, getting them recurrently, does it ever make you afraid to go out or? Mhm.
Me afraid to like, because like most of my panic attacks are like linked to like my phobia, which is like throwing up. So I get really nervous to go to new restaurants.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like it can make it where you don't want to ever go to a restaurant. Like it can escalate in that way.
I don't know if that's a word for.
Not necessarily, right? This one is more like, again, it has a bunch of different pieces to it, which is really abnormal. Most phobias are pretty specific, but it's more that you don't want to have any kind of like embarrassment or not be able to feel safe somewhere or even escape somewhere, which can do with crowds and being out in public and so on. Yeah. It can kind of come and go or be more like situational. So maybe let's say you have a panic attack in a classroom, right? And so then all of a sudden you're afraid to go to school, right? Or you have it at work, so you're afraid to go to work, right? So it can kind of be a little bit compartmentalized, or it can be very global, right? And I mentioned like I feel like I have a little bit of agoraphobia. Like even in a classroom, like I'll always sit by the door, right? But on the end, like you'll never find me anywhere in the middle because I feel like I can't get out, right? Like if I needed to. And that's kind of one way this can present. Like if we go to a movie, I won't sit in the middle of anywhere. I have to be on the end. And I have to be on the end if we go to like a performance, like, so it's not like impacting in any way. I just have to plan a little bit ahead, make sure I buy my tickets early or, what a shame we can't go to a musical or whatever because there aren't any good seats left, right? Yeah.
Would it manifest in some symptoms of it? Disorder or panic attacks?
For agoraphobia, it's more like a traditional phobia where just even the thought of it can cause you some anxiety, right? So for example, we went to see The Grinch at the Pantages over like winter break. And my kids insisted on sitting toward the end. And so I had to sit like 5 seats in. And even though I was with my family, I was sweating the whole time. And I was so worried about being able to get out or needing to get out that it was hard to enjoy the show. Right. And so that's kind of like how it might present, where it interferes with your ability to like enjoy something or feel comfortable. Let's say you had it in a classroom. If you couldn't sit where you wanted, you might not be able to pay attention at all because you're so focused on that, like anxiety. Okay. Other like stories or thoughts or comments or yeah.
Where I sit in the classrooms, I'd be better, but like movie theaters, even like restaurants, if I'm like sitting somewhere but I can't see the door, I'll be eating with them. Like, can you switch? Like, I need to like, see my route.
Right, and it some of it will be a little bit of like a preference, but if it starts to like cause you anxiety, then it's gone from preference to like a little bit more, right? And that's okay too, but but that can be a little bit how it presents for sure. Yeah.
I guess whenever I'm not at home or whenever I have to leave them soon, like my tummy really starts.
Your what?
My tummy really.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought you said tongue. I don't know why I heard tongue, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be like anxiety, right? Of, worrying that you're out of like an element of safety. Like your home is a very safe environment most of the time. For people, it's like a source of security. And the second you walk out, you have less control, right? Which can cause people
Yeah, I
anxiety.
don't know if that was.
It could be either.
Relationship is sources.
Yeah. Sure, sure. Anybody else? Any other thoughts at all? Some causes and treatments, right, for panic disorder. It can be somewhat biological, obviously. Norepinephrine is a big culprit in anxiety, especially in things like panic attacks. There's an area of the brain called the locus ceruleus, which produces a lot of norepinephrine. And so we can prescribe medications to help address like disparities in norepinephrine, right? That can be very common. But oftentimes there's a big cognitive element to this. Maybe something happened in your life where you had a moment where you couldn't escape, or you were embarrassed, and that led to like the agoraphobia, or the level of panic and anxiety you have a higher level of like anxiety sensitivity. And so the second you feel anxious, you start reacting to it and kind of create that meta panic or meta worrying sort of cycle. So a lot of the treatments for panic disorder are aimed at like helping you to understand what's going on, understanding that you're not going to die. It might feel like that, but it's going to calm down. What happened last time? Right. And so learning like some coping skills, some education. A lot of you have had panic attacks. What are some of the things that you've learned to do to either calm yourself down or maybe slow it down? Like, what are some of the things that you've learned? Yeah.
I'm so happy with my life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Safe. Or, and then also, I also kind of, if it's like super intense and I can't let myself lay down, I like to be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are both great suggestions. So a weighted blanket like gives you that feeling almost like of being embraced, right? Because of the pressure that it puts on you. And so that can be amazing. And the ice. So there are things called TIPS skills, right? And it's a very cognitive behavioral technique where you try to tip your mood or your cognitive state into a different spot. And ice is one of those things. So by holding ice or putting your head in cold water, it shocks your system out of its current state and can kind of reset you in a way. So T stands for temperature, right? For TIPS, it's like this whole like acronym. And you can also do things like exercise. like extreme exercise for a couple of minutes can also alter your physical state. Pressure, right, like with a weighted blanket. So those are both really wonderful like things that might help. Yeah,
Like a weighted blanket would make me feel suffocated.
totally. It could, right? It depends on the person, right? So some people love that feeling of like being cradled and it makes them feel safe and secure. Others, that extra weight might only just exacerbate, right? Do you have things that work for you when
Yeah,
you're feeling
For
that way?
me, whenever I used to get them, I would like go, like if I would get them in class specifically, I would go outside and just like sit outside.
Sure.
Or like if I'm at home, then I'll just like sit on the porch or something like that.
Okay,
And
great.
just like breathe.
And breathing, being outside.
I feel like the ice cube would help.
Yeah, that one's an interesting one. Like I said, either holding it in your hand, because it starts to hurt a little bit, but that pain that isn't going to damage you can be kind of altering. But sticking your head in cold water can also get you the same thing. It's like the idea of like a cold shower could shock you out of it a little bit as well. Other thoughts? Yeah.
As far as the weighted blankets.
Yeah.
They have weighted hoodies.
Oh,
I bought one of those.
yeah.
And,
Walking around really like.
It's like.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh,
glass
man.
beads inside. Hoodies always been like great thing to me.
Sure.
Immediately bought one. And it's pretty awesome.
That's amazing, right? Okay. A weighted hoodie. I like that. There was a hand over here somewhere as well. Yeah.
Somebody would tell me they're like coming.
Okay.
Just them telling me like, okay, I'm coming, sit there, I'm coming.
Yeah.
It's like this kid, like, if somebody's gonna come take care of me, something happens to me, they find me. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
It's that intense feeling.
You're not gonna be alone, so it's gonna find you something big
Yeah,
happens.
so that's why I'm like, okay, I'm some music.
Yeah.
A lot of classical music helps too, because it doesn't have words or anything, so your brain's just resting.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to mention music, because that's something that a lot of people will do is, I'm going to, you know, maybe there's a song that you have at home, you know, about the type of thing that. Yeah, right, finding a way to just calm down a little bit, you go a long way, having other people there, the weighted stuff as people are talking about, yeah.
I don't remember where, I heard it suggested that in some instances, directing a person to single out specific objects.
Sure.
And describe them
Mm-hmm.
helps to draw focus away from the overstimulating everything.
Yeah.
onto the focused points. I actually wanted to ask what your opinion on that was, because I've heard of that, but I've never heard if that was like recommended, or if that
Sure.
like would make it worse, because I don't even remember the questions.
Yeah, and it depends on the person, but it's like a form of grounding, right? So sometimes when things feel very unreal, what we recommend for people to do is try and ground yourself in the world around you, right? And so maybe you close your eyes and you focus on 5 sounds, right? One at a time. Like, and so like you hear the sound of the projector and the sound of the air or people moving. And then you focus on 5 sensations, right? I can feel my feet on the ground or you know, whatever it is, and then 5 smells, right? So, you know, grounding in that like extreme mindfulness can be really helpful for some, or it could like hyper, you know, a hyper kind of like, be making more sensitive in another way. So it might depend on the person, but it's really common for this kind of stuff is to focus on grounding and kind of being back in the moment. So like if you focus on one thing, it might eliminate everything else, which could be helpful for some. Right, these are really common. A lot, I mean, a lot of you sharing, and thank you again for sharing. But you know, the idea with these is that it reaches a peak, it goes away. And so trying to find ways to calm yourself down, whether, you know, whatever combination of things works for you, can be really, really helpful. And then there are obviously medications for people if all of those things aren't working. So these are really like relatively frequent. Again, it can be isolated, it can be a disorder with or without that agoraphobia, but a lot of people struggle with panic attacks. Anything else related to these before we move on? Any other stories or thoughts, comments? So before we get to OCD, which is the next one, I have to talk about superstitions. Superstitious beliefs are a huge part of obsessive compulsive disorder, right? And superstitions are relatively common. I guarantee a lot of you we'll know these, right? Okay, let's go through them, right? What a day keeps the doctor away? An apple, right? Step on what and break what? And break your mother's back, right? This morning, my daughter Paisley was like, step on a line and break your daddy's spine. I was like, that's messed up. Like, okay, whatever. So variation on that. It's good luck to carry a rabbit's butt. Bad luck to walk under a ladder. Bad luck to break a, and black water, bad luck. I have 2 black cats. I'm screwed, right? That's right. There's so many superstitious beliefs. People have a ton of these. Nothing wrong with having superstitious thinking, but it can go too far and become things like OCD. There's a huge correlation between the two. So with superstitions, we're talking about like beliefs or practices surrounding luck or prophecy or like spiritual beings. It's this idea that future events can be influenced by like unrelated prior ones, right? And these are really, really common, right? A lot of people have superstitious beliefs. Does anyone have one that's not up here? There's a ton of them that aren't up here. What are some other like common superstitions? Anyone have one? Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Oh, all right. I want to know the reasoning why you should ask her, right? Like why? That's interesting. Okay. Interesting, right? And so maybe somewhere along the line that was something that developed for her, or it could be cultural, like it's hard to say. Okay, interesting. I love it. Yeah. Oh,
It's just like.
uh-huh.
Sports.
Yep. Sports fans and athletes are probably like some of the most superstitious, like people, do you remember that season? You might not, like this was a big deal to me because I was a big Brady fan, where he had the 18-0 season and then they lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants, right? I don't want to talk about it, but that season I wore my lucky Brady jersey every single game. Didn't wash it because I didn't want to wash the bad luck, the good luck away. I didn't want to wash it away. And my partner, I spilled something on it the game before the Super Bowl, and she washed it and they lost in the Super Bowl and I blamed her. I was all mad. I was like, it's your fault. And she's like, you're not watching football anymore, which obviously didn't stick. But like it's that kind of belief, right? If you watch baseball players when they go up to the mound, right? Or when they go up to bat, not to the mound. When they go up to bat, they usually have like a specific routine that they follow. And if they don't get it quite right, they often step out of the box and do it again. Basketball players, before they do like a foul shot or a penalty shot, watch how many times they flip the ball or dribble it. They have like a routine, right? Athletes are notoriously superstitious, right? Mahomes, speaking of the Super Bowl, he had an interview yesterday. He wears the same pair of underwear every time he plays, right? He washes them. You're like disgusted. You're like, ugh, right? He washes them, right? Which he was careful to clarify. But he wears the same pair of lucky underwear every time. His wife was teasing him for it, right? She was like, yeah, these ratty old underwear, but he wears them every time. But it's clearly working for him, right? But it's that superstitious belief. If I don't wear these underwear, I'm not going to win the game, right? If I don't do X, this won't happen, right? Very, very common. And this can lead to more issues, right? If you get really wrapped up in these. What are some other ones? Anyone else have one? Yeah. Okay.
That's like there, but like every time like she would feel like bad juju in the house, like she would like make my mom walk on stage.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and saging or cleansing is pretty
every time
like,
she- yeah.
okay. Love it. Interesting. There was yeah.
That way, kids lose their baby teeth. It's good luck to throw them up on the roof.
Oh, what's that on the roof over there? Okay, interesting. And there's so many cultural ones, right? Like different cultures having different beliefs. That's interesting. I've never heard that one before. Yeah.
Old Russian thing, but don't do anything important on Tuesdays.
Okay.
And my parents would just go, but what are you doing today? Like,
It's Tuesday. All right. Interesting. Good thing we don't have class on Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Do laundry and don't wash your hair, so washing out any loose left
Hmm,
comes for the new year.
for the year. Interesting. Okay. Some of these I've never heard before. I love that. I love it. Other ones? How many of you knock on wood? Right? Right? So that's a really common one, right? Like, uh-oh, you better knock on wood, right? You knock 3 times. And they usually have like a belief behind them. Like it was thought that spirits lived within trees. Good spirits lived within trees. So when you knock on wood, which comes from trees, you're calling on the good spirits to bring you good fortune and look out for you. The 13th floor, 13 being an unlucky number, right? If you go to a hotel, they almost never have a 13th floor. They never have like 13 anywhere because Judas was the 13th guest, right at the Last Supper, bad luck number. There's so many of these. There's just an absolute ton. Spilling salt, right? If you spill salt, you have to throw it over your shoulder to hide the demons that are lurking behind you to bring you bad luck, right? Oftentimes we don't know the like other things like that behind them, but there's so many of them. Anyone have any other ones that you could think of? Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Right? Because of the number 13, right? It's a great day to watch all the Friday the 13th movies. Right? I don't think it's a scary day. Yeah.
Didn't the pandemic literally start?
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Well, that's never going to help them. That number will never go away now, right? Right. We're coming up on it, right?
That's when my school died.
On the 13th,
Yeah.
right? Interesting. Anybody else? Any other ones? Any performers in here? What don't you say before a performance? Good luck, right? You gotta say break a leg instead, right? Right, Macbeth, right? Like, and the whole like, you don't mention Macbeth either, right? But it's like a superstitious belief, right? You don't say good luck, you have to say break a leg, right? There's so many of these. And again, nothing wrong with being superstitious, but when it gets too far, when you're consumed by these, like if I don't do X, something bad will happen, it can lead into obsessive compulsive disorder. And just like every other disorder that we're talking about, a lot of us have small elements of this, right? Just like everything else. But when people have OCD, they have these like disturbing thoughts that cause them anxiety, which prompt them to perform like ritualistic behaviors to get rid of it, right? And contamination has been a really like big, like disturbing thought for a lot of people because of COVID. So you wash your hands a certain number of times, or maybe you have to check something a certain number of times, or turn the lights on and off when you walk into a room a certain number of times, right? It starts to become something that interferes in a way, right? And it has to take up some time. It has to take up at least an hour on average a day. But for some people, it can be much, much more than that. And again, some degree of this is normal, right? Like every night, for example, before I go to bed, I check to make sure that my front door is locked every night, right? It's like just like a habit that I have. About to go to bed, we turn off all the lights, put the cats out so they don't attack us all night long, and then lock the door, right? And I can say that a couple of times I've been like, did I lock it? I'm not sure. And I've gone back and I've checked it. I would say checking it once or twice, not a big deal. But let's say that I start getting in the habit of like, well, is it really locked? And then I start like turning it a few times, and it becomes where I have to unlock it and lock it 5 times in order to make sure. Then I go to lay down in bed and I can't sleep because I'm not sure that the door is locked, right? And I'm getting up out of bed and I'm not sleeping because I'm not sure. Then it's crossed from like kind of normal, typical behavior into something that's a little bit more disordered. Now, I have an example of this that I'd like to play for you. Very common in parents, especially with their first children. People can get a little bit intense when they have a first child. I remember when we had our daughter, we wouldn't take her, I wouldn't let her go out in public for like a month. We finally went out into public. We went to a Target, and this old lady, this older like grandma came up, oh, you have a baby. And I was like, back off, grandma. I was so rude to this poor lady. It's like, get away from her. I haven't lived that down in my family. But like people get really like protective over new children. And it can exacerbate something that was already there. So this is an example of a young mother with very severe OCD. And then we could talk a little bit more about it and how it's treated and so on. But I think it's a good example. You can see she has these fears, and then she has these behaviors that she's performing to try and alleviate the fear. And that's kind of the essence of this disorder. People have obsessive thoughts and then they perform compulsions to try and make the thoughts go away. Right. So for her, it's contamination is her big obsession or fear. So she has these compulsive rituals that she engages in with like the washing of the hands and so on in order to make that fear better. Now, this can be checking behaviors. It can be trying to balance things out. It can be all sorts of different things, right? But really, really common that all of us have a little bit of this. But when people have both of these present, it's taking up at least an hour a day, you know, then we might diagnose them with something like OCD. And I had a student years ago who had obsessive compulsive disorder. And she came up to me after this class and told me, and it was so interesting because this young woman would get up and leave class like 3 or 4 times a class, right? And I didn't know why. Like I thought maybe she was going to the bathroom. I didn't know. I didn't ask. Like it wasn't my business to ask. But after this class, she came up and told me, you know, she was like, have you ever wondered why I leave multiple times a class? And I was like, yes, I have. Are you going to tell me? And it turned out that she was going all the way to the parking lot to check her car to make sure that it was locked, right? And then coming back. And I'm like, you're going all the way there? She's like, yeah, that's why I'm usually like out of breath when I come back. And I'm like, I wasn't going to ask. It's not my business. But every single class, she was leaving like 3, 4, 5 times to go check to make sure that her car was still locked. She was afraid somebody would steal it, right? And so the thought was that like my car is unlocked, someone's going to take it. And the compulsion was to go check to make sure. She's like, I lock it and unlock it a couple of times, and then I feel like it's safe and I come back. But then like it builds that maybe I didn't actually lock it, that something happened, and I have to go check it again and then come back. And she's like, it takes up a lot of time. I miss stuff. And I was like, you realize now that you told me I'm not going to let you leave, right? And she was like, wait, really? I was like, yeah, if you go to leave, I'm going to call you out in front of everybody. And I was like, oh, I'm so not that aggressive. But like in my mind, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And then she didn't show up the next class. And I felt so bad. I was like, oh, I scared her away. And then she finally came back, but she never left again. She sat there and she looked stressed and she'd be all sweating. And I felt so awful. But at the end of the semester, she came up, she was like, I broke the habit. I was so afraid to get up and leave that you would call me out in front of everybody that I didn't leave and nothing bad happened. And it turned out to be really good. It could have been bad, but it turned out good. And it's that kind of stuff where like it interferes with your ability to focus and to pay attention or to do the things that are required of you because it's taking up so much energy and time, right? And so people have, again, that thought, and then there's the behavior to try and get rid of it. Anyone in here have people in your life with OCD? Any stories, comments, or anything? Anything you want to share? Okay. Yeah. So have the repeated behavior to try to avoid something happening. Anybody else? Other things? Yeah.
2 friends, and one of them, if they're typing something
Uh-huh.
on their phone, a text message, they made a mistake, they have to delete the whole thing and retype it, even if it's in a paragraph form.
Okay.
Or they'll have to like, I forgot what it was, but they'll have to do something over and over 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other friend of mine, I don't know if this is the same thing, but they cannot sleep, which is strange because they have, and like they have pets.
Uh-huh.
They can't sleep if their pet has hair on their bed or anything. They can't leave the house if they have hair on their bed.
Okay.
It's like really, like one time I had tell them they had hair on their back. And we went somewhere and they wouldn't go into the store with me.
Huh.
They refused, like they were genuinely very upset with me.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be this, right? If there's like a fear behind it, and then the compulsion would be having to get rid of that hair.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right.
If I feel like there's something in my hands, I have to wash my hands. Like
Yeah.
it honestly interferes with like work. Like because I'll be working and I'll have to go to the bathroom like 5 or 6 times every shift.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the same.
It could be, right? And again, a lot of us have these tendencies, but they can like go a little beyond like normal at times. Yeah.
The on the team she was on, they had a teammate and who had OCD, and she would like, it would like interrupt the game almost because she needed to like walk to the on deck circle a certain way and needed to do a certain thing in the on deck circle. And then if she didn't do it, she would need to like go back to the dugout and do
Yeah.
it again. And then it would be the same. And she was like, walk to go hit, like she would have to do certain things. And if she didn't do it right, like she would have to start over.
Yeah.
And then it started to like interfere with like the other players' game. So yeah, it's a situation.
Yeah, and like a few little things that maybe no one notices, but if it's like it has to be just a certain way and it takes up time,
Yeah.
it could interfere with the game, right? My daughter has this thing where like every time before she goes up to bat, she unvelcros and revelcros her glove like 4 times. And like that's just like a ritual or a habit. Like I've noticed it, like, and I tease her for it. She's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then she goes up to bat. And I'm like, all right, good luck, you know? And like that's not a big deal, but when it starts to interfere with the game and other people are noticing, then we've crossed the line, right? Really interesting. There's another disorder too called OCPD, which we'll talk about. It's probably my favorite disorder. If you could have a favorite, it's mine. And I'll talk about that when we get to personality disorders. It's a little different than this, but it sounds very similar. And it's where things have to be just so, like people who are kind of perfectionists and obsessed with control. A lot of common elements with this. We'll talk about that in like a month or two. But this one, anxiety disorder, because you're trying to alleviate the anxiety with those compulsions that you're performing. Some theories here. Of course, Freud had a theory about this. It's kind of been debunked. It's not something that's necessarily grounded in evidence, but there are some kind of interesting like threads with it that you can take away. Freud talked a lot about OCD coming from potty training or toilet training in young children. Now, this is something that still has a lot of emphasis on it, right? And so Freud had his like psychosexual stages that he covered, where all of your sexual and aggressive energy are focused on different parts of the body. Now, in the stage where you're learning to use the toilet instead of diapers, right? He talked about like if you're too strict or harsh or punitive or too lenient and kids are having too many accidents, that things can go wrong during toilet training or potty training, and it can lead to OCD. Now, Freud used the term anal retentive. If somebody is anal retentive, right, they kind of like everything has to be just perfect, right, just a certain way. They're like very uptight about it. He literally meant it as you're retaining and holding on to your feces, right? And so a child might refuse to go to the bathroom because they want that control, right? Or maybe they have an accident on purpose because they want the control. So he talked a lot about the potty training and anxiety and things like OCD as an adult. Not like at least a little bit that like, you know, potty training is a very, very important time to be handled delicately. You don't want to punish, but you don't want to be too lenient. He specifically correlated it to OCD. Behaviorally, we're much more concerned with your compulsions. So from a behavioral model, right, we worry about the behaviors. The behaviors are the compulsions. So from this perspective, we want to stop the compulsions from happening. My student who would get up and leave, her compulsion was to get up and go check her car. When she couldn't do that anymore, it broke the cycle. And that is called exposure and response prevention. What happens is you expose someone to the thing that they have anxiety about, and then you prevent them from responding in their normal way. And by doing this, they learn that nothing bad happens and it stops that conditioning cycle and it lessens. Now, if something bad were to happen, it might be nearly impossible to break this down the line. And, you know, unfortunately, that happens every now and then. But most of the time, this can be really helpful. And so I have a video of that same mom going through this exposure and response prevention. It's a very behavioral technique, oftentimes mixed with some cognitive stuff as well. So let me show you what this could look like. And you'll notice she makes huge improvements by going through this process. I'll play that for you so you can see what it would look like. And I'll handle Jake by having her do all those things. She's stopping that response from happening, and you start to break that cycle of conditioning, and hopefully like it starts to alleviate and get better. It's a difficult process, right? You saw her crying, she's upset, right? It's a lot of anxiety. But the more that you do it, the more that you break that cycle, the better that it starts to get. And those compulsions lessen or maybe even go away, right? And so again, difficult process to go through, but can be really, really helpful. There's a couple of other things that are thought to play a role, like from a cognitive perspective and a biological perspective. So cognitively, people blame themselves. If I don't do X, then Y will happen, right? And oftentimes X and Y aren't even related, right? Like to think that like my jersey that I wore had any power over what was going to happen in a game that I'm not even at, right? Isn't necessarily sensical, right? And so oftentimes you get people kind of blaming themselves or expecting terrible things to happen. And so what we have to do is kind of look at those obsessive thoughts in therapy, right? Like how much control do you really have in this situation? Why would that behavior stop this behavior? Let's look at what happens when you wash your hands once. Let's look at look at everything from like a logical education kind of perspective and see what we can change, what you actually have control over. So looking at some of the thoughts that might be fueling it and seeing if you can address or change them along with the behaviors, right? So we could do cognitive behavioral as well, which is really, really common. And then biologically, low levels of serotonin can also contribute to things like OCD. So they mentioned she was on Prozac, I think is what they said. Prozac is an antidepressant, which affects serotonin levels, increasing serotonin. So it's not uncommon that people will take things like antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications to help them alleviate some of those symptoms of OCD. So like with anything, it's probably some combination of all of these, but it's not uncommon if someone has really severe OCD that they wouldn't maybe consider a medication or look at the thoughts or look at the behaviors and kind of tackle it all together, right? And people can make a lot of improvements if they're willing to go through that process. Any like stories of people in your life, quite like questions, thoughts, stories, anything related to OCD? Yeah.
That's the or the one that we watched in the door.
Oh.
It mostly relates to like cleanliness in his dog.
Okay.
So even he won't let his wife touch the dog without washing her hands. So the treatment, you have to like touch the doorknob and his dog will watch his wife watch someone else and then.
Yeah, probably really difficult for him to do, but the more you do it, the more it kind of becomes the new normal, right? And it's so hard because like, as I said that, I kept thinking, like, I've gotten kind of bad with this, like, because of COVID. I won't let anyone wear shoes in the house anymore. Like, and it started during COVID. Like, when COVID first hit, we had no idea what it was, and it was so much scarier, you know, in the beginning. And so, like, I remember going to the grocery store and coming home and literally, like, stripping down when I walked into the house, right? And, like, cleaning the groceries. Like, we were kind of on that, like, intense end. My partner has a really poor immune system, so I didn't want her to get sick. Right. And so as part of COVID, I don't let anyone wear shoes in the house anymore. And like my in-laws came over for the Super Bowl and my father-in-law didn't take off his shoes. And I was so mad at him, like for like 20 minutes, and just like glaring at him everywhere he went. And finally it was like, Dad, your shoes, you know? And like at that point, he's walked through the whole house. It doesn't matter. Right. But the more that like people wear their shoes in the house, in theory, the more I should like start to let that go. I'm not sure that I've gotten there yet, but like, it's that idea of like, it becomes the new normal and it's replacing some of like what was normal to you, like what you're describing with your uncle. Now it's okay to pet the dog and then touch other things, or it's okay to wear your shoes. Like we can always clean afterward if we need to, right? And so there's a lot of like reconditioning that takes place here. Any other like stories or comments or thoughts? Yeah. Yeah.
My grandma was like 90. She had like several of the comorbidities.
Right.
So my job was to do her grocery shop.
Mhm.
I was so paranoid that I was gonna like kill my grandmother.
Yeah.
That, like I was like, what can I do to like? So I wanted to sanitize all her groceries before I gave it to her, but you couldn't find cleaning supplies.
Right.
You couldn't find
Yeah.
rubbing alcohol, nothing.
Or toilet paper, right? Yeah.
this UVC light that normally runs in like a air conditioning duct.
Okay,
And it like sanitizes the air as it goes through. So it's just like a high powered UVC light that immediately sterilizes all bacteria, viruses, whatever. And I mounted it inside like these metal boxes that you mount on truck beds.
okay,
So I had like the sterilizing chamber that I would literally put all the groceries in there and count like 20 seconds,
sure.
every single thing. And you can't let it touch your skin. So I had like a full face mask and like elbow length rubber gloves. So
Yeah.
that like none of that light would like hit my skin. And I would
Mhm.
just sit there and just put groceries in this box.
Mhm.
So that's how extreme it got.
Yeah,
At my house, because, you know, like I said, like
yeah, you don't want to like.
I had to make
have
sure
her-
I was doing every possible thing I
Yeah.
could think of. And I was very creative, so.
Yeah,
I was like, I have to do it, you know.
yeah, and I think that's where we get into those Ds, right? And then like what's normal at one time,
Yeah.
like that was, I would say completely not abnormal in like 2020, 2021,
Right.
right? But is it normal in 2024? You know, and that's where like it starts to get a little tricky, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I bet it was, I would have a hard time stopping something like that because you get used to
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Mhm. Right, right. Give her one contaminated grocery to see if it's okay, right? Yeah, I mean, and it's tricky, like those life events can shape our ideas of normality, like so much, right? What was normal in 2020, 2021, and what's normal now, I mean, it was just constantly shifting for years, right? And I still sometimes like don't know, like whenever we go to the doctor's office, I make my kids wear a mask. Because everybody is there, like people who are there are sick, right? And like I can't let that one go. Like I've let every other like mask situation go, but not at the doctor's office or the hospital where people are likely to be ill, right? And it's just like it's a constant readjustment. And I think we've all gone through that, right? And so it's interesting. These things were so common during that time, and a lot of people have struggled to let them go. I have an aunt who like has never come out of like the COVID mentality. Like she's still just as intense about it as like she was in 2021 or 2020. And it makes it where she won't go anywhere. Like it changed her in a way. And some of you are nodding, right? It just big cultural events like that can sometimes cause like mass mental illness in a way. Interesting. All right, I'm gonna stop here so I can talk about the paper for just a second, and then we'll pick up with this and then go into the next chapter next time. But I just want to take just a couple of minutes before we run out of time here to remind you that that first part of your paper is due by tonight. Now, some of you have already turned it in, which is amazing, and if you haven't, that's okay as well. But if you're on our campus, our course website here on Canvas, and you click on announcements, and I'm sorry, it's way over here on the left side right here, announcements or assignments. If you click on assignments, you can see right here where it says diagnosis paper part 1, and that it's due by tonight at 11:59 p.m. So if you click on that, and right here, it's worth 10 points. Okay, so it's a very easy 10 points. You want to get these, right? It's the first part of your paper. And it's brief, as we talked about before, like under a page, maybe even just about a paragraph or so. I'm not worried about formatting, just content, right? I want you to tell me what character you're interested in doing and why, and then give me your show information, whether it's a movie or a video game or a TV show or a series or whatnot. And you're literally just giving me that, maybe about a paragraph, but it does need to be typed and uploaded and submitted here into Canvas. It's worth 10 points. Now, remember that I do accept these things late. There's a penalty, but if you don't get to it today and you want to email it to me tomorrow, you can still get up to 9 points. So you lose 10% each day, which is 1 point for this, but you can always turn this in late if you don't quite get there today. But try and get there. It's due by this evening at 11:59 p.m. Are there any questions at all about this? Again, it's really brief, but I'm hoping that you are kind of starting to commit to a character. You can always change it later if you want to, but the sooner you commit to somebody, the you don't have to do more work. So try and pick someone that you're interested in spending some time thinking about and diagnosing. Any questions about this? I know a lot of you had shared that you have characters already. Feeling good about that? Okay, so you're turning that in here on Canvas. So what you'll do is you'll hit start assignment up here at the top. And then it'll allow you to upload a file. Okay, so it won't let you upload a Pages file or like a Google Drive link. So make sure you're actually uploading like an actual file. The Google links like oftentimes are a little bit of a pain, like if you don't give me permission, and Pages Canvas can't convert for whatever reason. So just make sure that you are uploading a file. You can pick anything, anyone, whatever interests you. What I'll do is I'll hang out for a few minutes if you do have any questions about that and want to come ask me. Otherwise, on Wednesday, as I mentioned, we'll finish up chapter 4, and then we'll move on to stress and trauma disorders, which is the next chapter. So I'll hang out for a few minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you on Wednesday.